Hello, how is it going? Tonight we're going to talk about teaming up the Digitone here with the friendly little Volca Sample, which is on this side down here. So if you watched my other video, I went through trying to use the Volca Beats as kind of the main drum machine with the Digitone. And then, it worked, but it was a bit of a pain in the butt. If you watch the video, you can see in order to use it properly, I kind of had to go into trigger record, and then let me get under the MIDI menu, and then under each trig, I'd have to go in here and set it to be 36 for the kick or whatnot. Anyway, it's a lot easier than that with the sample, and that's why I basically have repurposed it as my drum machine, which I'll be showing you tonight. So how did I do that? Well, first off, on the sample itself, I had to load it up with drum samples. So thankfully I bought a sample pack back for Black Friday. It was like 30 bucks. Probably got ripped off, but maybe not. It has a number of drum and synth samples in it. But in this case, for each memory slot in here, for memory 1 to 8, and pardon me for my dirty hands. I was out in the garden today. There's no toilet paper shortage at the Cape Run House. I was digging through the garden. Anyway, for memory 1, I've set up the Lindrum, and memory 2, I set up an 808, and tried to keep for each part the kick drum and the snare. I try to keep it similar between the various drum sets. So 8 different sets. So the Lindrum 808, Drumulator, MPC1, 909. I have 808 on here twice, so hopefully I didn't load that in twice. SP 1200 and the drum tracks. So I'll look into that. Make sure I didn't load 2 808s. Let's see if I did. Let's see. So according to my notes here, I have an 808 on memory 2. This will be really funny. Yeah, I loaded in the same drum kit twice. That does not sound like an 808, so I must have just wrote it down wrong when I made my notes here, thankfully. I was a little worried about my intelligence there. If I loaded the same drum kit on this thing twice, I just made bad notes. Anywho, that's how I went. I just used the Android app to load in those various drum samples. So I basically have given up all the other functionality of my sample, and it's being used as a slave to the Digitone here as a drum machine. So why did I choose to use the sample over the Beats? Well, one, I can have 8 different drum kits on here versus the Beats, kind of 808 clone, which is nice. A lot of number of different drum sounds. But the main thing for me was the issue I was having with the Beats is the MIDI notes sent to trigger the various parts in the Beats was awkward using the trig keys or the keys on the key step to trigger. And basically you needed like kind of a MIDI drum pad to do it properly, and I don't have a beat step or anything like that, so it kind of ruled the Beats out. So with the Digitone, it's a lot easier to trigger the various parts in the sample. Now, in order to do this, a couple of key things. The bass functionality of the Volca Sample won't enable to do this. You're going to have to download Pajen's Beta 7. I had Beta 6 previously installed on the sample, but for all the functionality I'm going to show you in here, you're going to need Pajen's Beta 7, I think it is, for the Volca Sample, the unofficial firmware. I made a quick video on Beta 6 if you want to see what's it all about. What Beta 7 adds in is some additional CCs that we're going to use on MIDI channel 10, which is the channel we're used to control the Volca Sample from the Digitone. So let's go ahead, before we get any further, let's set up let's get into a clean pattern here. So hold down pattern, I'll just pick 13 because that's my lucky number. And good, it is lucky, there's nothing loaded into there, so it should be kind of a raw, empty pattern. So let's go. I'm trying to keep my drums on track 4, and I'm just going to take a pause because I'm going to turn off my work laptop so it doesn't keep buzzing through this video. I'll be right back. Alright, what are we doing here? We have basically an empty pattern with nothing in it, nothing set on the Digitone side, nothing set on the MIDI side, and we're going MIDI track 4 here, and we're going to connect it to our Volca sample. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are going to use with Pajen's custom firmware, we are using channel 11. Pardon me, I think I might have said 10 before. It's 11 we want to use, because under channel 11, well, we can use these keys here. Let me go to a easier drum set here. That's going to sound more normal. I can trigger all 10 parts on the sample under one. I don't have to move the octaves up and down. It's not as awkward as it was on the Beats. Feel free to watch the Beats video if you want to see how awkward that was. But it's nice. If I don't want to get into each trig and independently set them, I can easily now, do a manual record over it using the trig keys versus before. And I can still do this now. And it's easy to remember too, because it's always going to start at 60. And 60 is going to be part 1 on the Volca sample, 61 will be part 2, 62 will be part 3, and so on, up to 69. Anyways, so it's much easier to set up the trigs, and I'll show you that in a sec. Well, why don't we just go ahead and set up a simple 4 on the floor, not 4 on the 4 kick. So let's go into we got, how many pages are we working with here? So good, just a simple 1 page. Let's get out of here. That's great. We're gonna go here, and yeah, that sounds good. And this should all be a kick drum if we hit play. Cool, eh? A bit easier. And then also, for example, hey, you know what? I want that to be the snare instead of the kick drum. Just set it to 61. Hold it down. Tweak this a little bit. And push play. Not great, so let's go ahead and bring it back to just create a simple little drum loop here. We'll throw a snare just for shits and giggles. Ain't gonna be a hit, but it'll be good enough for a demonstration of what I'm gonna do here. So at the very easiest level, just doing that is far more functional than I found the Beats, and that's before we can do any of the other tricks. And some of the other, and what I'll do is, alright, let's look at the documentation here. So this is the documentation that some gentleman did. I'll try to figure it out and throw him some credit below, but basically made a PDF document around Pajen's custom firmware. So I've had to disable the channel 1 to 10 stuff, and I'll show you why, just from my setup, which kind of sucks because you can use channel 1 to 10 to control parts 1 to 10 chromatically with a key step or even this keyboard. But the problem is, and I gotta check this out, is I'm hooking this in to the keys and the FM too, and I'm controlling them via MIDI, and I'm hoping. And I think, and I'd have to confirm this, that I can only set the MIDI channel from 1 to 10 on them. I gotta check out the PDS for those, because if I'm wrong and I can set it over 11, well then I can set this one to 12. I can set this one to 13, and if I can set, I'm pretty sure I can set the Behringer over 11, because if I can set that one to like 12, 13, 14 for the other ones, well then I can keep that chromatic ability enabled. But I don't know if I can, so I'll have to check that. I'll do that later. What I want to show you now is I've shown you how the basic setup works, and that's fine for most cases. But what you can do is with Pajen's custom firmware is for parts 1 to 10 individually, using CC messages, MIDI CC messages, you can control the levels of the various parts. You can control the pan left to right of various parts, the start, the length, the high cut that you can read, hopefully, and you can see all the things you can do with CC messages. So how does that work with the Digitone? And at a very simple demonstration, I'm going to pick speed here. So if I look at the demonstration, and this is one problem, is I can't control CC00 on the Digitone. So no matter what I do, I'm never going to be able to control part 1's level, because part 1's level needs to be set to MIDI message CC00, and I can't do that on the Digitone, but all the other ones I can. So it's a bit of a pain if I want to control the level of the kick drum throughout the sequencer, but I can work around that by when I reload samples into the Volca sample that, okay, I'm going to make sure anything I put in the part 1, or I don't even have to reload, I can readjust my memory here, is okay, anything in part 1, don't put any of the sample sounds of part 1 that I want to control the level of. I can work around it. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's not the end of the world, but I can do everything else. So that aside, let me show you how I can adjust the speed using the Digitone and not touching the Volca sample. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I know I'm going to have to send MIDI message 50 to the Volca sample through the Digitone to affect the speed of the kick. So if I just push play now, that's what I get, right? So what I want to do is have that kick speed, the speed of that sample, start slower and build up as it goes through that simple loop. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing I have to do is I have to hit the amp button on the Digitone, which goes in. So I have 8 different CC messages I'm able to send. So you can have up to 8 of these controls. So what I'm going to do is, for one here, hopefully you can see that, I'm going to set that to 50. And if I can, there we go. So why 50? Because 50 is going to control the speed of part 1, which is the kick, as I've set it up on my Volca sample. Okay, so that's 50. So let's go ahead, cool. Let's go ahead and go back to here and hit play. All right. Well, let's not do that. That's what I want to demonstrate. Okay, well, why can't I control that? Well, I have to enable it under this filter button, which brings up the MIDI CC control. So in order to so I go here and I can see for this one, I've set to be 50, right? So I need to go in here, and first thing I gotta do is I gotta enable A. So I gotta hold down function and push this knob down, which turns it on. And it says 0 right now. So before I even touch it, it's not going to register anything. So let's see what happens. So there you go. Cool, eh? So that's one thing you can do, is even without doing anything else. And let's add something for, let's add the level to the snare. So that should be under here, just as another demonstration. So 0 in, so I know all the zeros starting at 0, 0. It's going to be level for part 1. So using that same logic, 0, 1 should be the level of part 2, which currently on my sample is the snare drum. So let's see if we can set the level of that to be used with dial B here. All right, so what did I say it was? 1, so let's dial this all the way down to 1. And let's go to here. Oh, here we go. Turn on this dial so it'll actually do something. Hit play. And there you go. I can control the level of the snare. So you only have 8 of those that you can actually actively control on the Digitone. So pick your 8 most common ones. And the other thing is, if you're not going to be using, an FM or keys, if you're only just hooking this up to one, device, I can go ahead and use the other MIDI tracks. And there's nothing stopping me from hooking these up to channel 11 too, and having 8 additional controls and syncing different drum parts through the different MIDI channels. So even though you're only, limited to 8 of those CC values per track. If you're not using other devices, if you only have a Digitone and a Volca Sample, you can use that Volca Sample under all 4 MIDI tracks and have each MIDI track playing different parts, and for those different parts sending different CC messages. So in my case, I'm a little limited where I want to use those other MIDI tracks for other devices, but if I'm just making, if I throw something together, fun with the Digitone itself, right? Not that that's so awesome, but let's say, I use all 4 of the tracks of the Digitone mostly to put a complete song together, and it's like, oh hey, I want some cool sounding drum loops in the background. I don't want to add in the Model D, or I don't want to add in the FM, or I don't want to add in the keys. I can dedicate all 4 MIDI tracks to the Volca Sample and use each MIDI track to use a couple different parts, and for those couple different parts use the 8 CC messages available per track to just modify the sound of those different parts as it goes through the loop. So you have options, right? I'm only locked into what I lock myself into, really. At the end of the day, I have 4 separate MIDI tracks that I can push into the sample, and each MIDI track can have 8 CC messages. That is my limitations with the sequencer and brain on this sucker here, which is pretty not too bad at all. Anyway, just wanted to get into that. And the other thing I wanted to show you to do is, like, okay, you have manual control over the sequencer like this, but you can actually tell the sequencer to do that itself. So for example, let's go back into our grid view. So 1, 9, 5, and 13, those steps are the kick drum, and 3 and 11 are the snare. So let's say for the kick drum we want it to, the speed to start, slow and then speed up as it goes through the loop. So let's go ahead and we hold down 1, we go back to our CC value here, and then let's see how it highlights yellow. That's an indication, hey, you're not setting this universally. You're setting it for this specific step on the sequencer. So I'm holding down 1, I'm dropping this to 20, I'm going to go to 5, and I'm going to move this to 40. And now, so you see, as soon as I let go of the key, it snaps back up. So if I push the key down, I can see, okay, so it's saying, hey, for this step in the sequence, yeah, we're going to make the speed 40, but universally, that's where it's at. So let's go ahead and keep that pattern going we'll build it up by 20 each time. So go 20, 40, 60, and then 80 for it. And that's the one nice thing about this too, is if you look at the sample, I don't want to move the camera around again because I screwed it up last time, but you don't have that exact pinpointed values when you're using the dinky little knobs on the Volca Sample. Which is nice about this is you can set those knobs but have that precision value set in, and you can do it manually via the knobs, or you can do it via the sequencer just like this. Ain't gonna win a friggin' Grammy, but it gets the point across. So let's do the same for the snare with the level. So let's start really quiet and then blow the door down really with a loud one. So that's pretty cool, eh? And yes, there's nothing stopping you doing this exact same thing with the Beats. But with the Beats, I'm stuck to just the 808 kind of clone of the Beats. And the thing that drives me crazy with the Beats is just the way the MIDI notes are set up for each part. I had to make a note. Okay, well, all right, so part, 36 is the kick, 38 is the snare, and then below I was writing, okay, which key is that? So I can, it was just, I don't want to have this, glued to my wall or, taped to my wall here every time I want to use the Beats with my Digitone. It's just so much natural and easier to use the sample. And maybe one of these days I'll upgrade and get the Digicart, but that's a bit off. And I'm debating, do I get the Digicart or do I go full, the Octatrack? But for now, I'm leaning on the 3 Volcas I have here to cover some holes and add a little bit of extra. Most of the work will be probably powered by the Digitone, the Model D, and then the sample doing drum beats, and then what the nice thing about the FM is it adds in another 3 voices of FM that I can, if I for some reason I run out on the Digitone, I got another 3 that I can play around with on the FM, and then the keys is just, it's a pretty unique little sucker. It can do a lot of different sounds. So if I want some weird sound effects and whatever I'm putting together, or if I want to, a really powerful lead sound or whatnot, it's versatile for what you get out of it. If I'm just adding it in because I find that it can make some pretty unique, fun sounds, and I might not use it all the time, but I feel it works well with this kind of Digitone Volca setup I got on. And then the Model D is, a clone of the great Mini Moog, and there's not much it can't do for bass sounds or leads. So it's a powerful little. I'm pretty happy with what I got set up here. Anyways, the only other thing I wanted to show you is, and I came across this too because I'm like, oh, well, this is awesome. I'm using channel 11 to control my sample. I have channel 1 to 10 ready to go, and this is where I was talking before, where I got to figure out if I can set the Volcas to a different channel, because for example right now I think I got the Volca keys, I just turned it on, I think I got it, and I put it on MIDI 2, and I think I got it running on channel 2, so we'll check here, right? Oh, if I go to the right menu, set that to 2, come on, let go of function. All right, let's see, turn on. So that's the keys playing right now, which is great. But before this video, and let's take a look at the sample. It's with Pajen's custom firmware. He now, with his custom firmware, which is great even if you don't have a Digitone, he set something up where you can now, for each of the parts, you can play them chromatically. But I had to disable that, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to turn it back on. Give me a sec here. I believe it's 9. We'll see if I get lucky. So that's great. So you heard before I was playing the keys, right? But the problem now is I'm still in MIDI 2, and I turned the chromatic functionality. So it's set to channel 2. You see, the problem is that the Volca Sample is also listening on channel 2 for part 2 on how to play it chromatically. So I'm going to turn off the keys, so you're going to hear, which is kind of cool, right? Because easy way to quickly adjust the pitch of the snare, or the key of it, whatever. But the problem being, if I want to play my keys, I'm always going to have the snare cracking whenever I lay down the note on it. Which, depending on what you're doing, might actually not be a bad thing, but by default I want that off. So what I had to do with the Volca Sample custom firmware is I just had to disable, I believe it is global setting 9, and when I do that, I can't play the various parts chromatically anymore, but I can now play the keys on the Digitone, the Volca keys on the Digitone, without a snare drum always popping off in the background. So that's one other thing I want to show you, because if you're new to the sample and you're new to the custom firmware and you get something like this set up and you're going like, Nick, how the hell did you get it? Where I'm trying to play my other stuff and all I can hear is my drums popping off in the background. Well, that's probably why. You've probably installed the custom firmware, enabled global setting 9 and 10, and set one of your Volcas to channel between 9 and 10, and now when you play that channel, you're also going to play that part chromatically. Just want to throw that out there, because at the end of last night playing with this, I ran into that same problem, and thankfully it's pretty easy to fix. But just want to throw it out there, and because it is a limitation I'm having to put on the sample now with the custom firmware in order to work with this setup how I have it right now. So if I can figure out a way to get the other Volcas to go above channel 11, I'm set. I'm pretty sure the Model D can do that, so I'm going to look into that if that's possible. If it's not, oh, there goes my gimbal stick. It's had enough of this video. So yeah, there's Mario up there. How's he doing? That's a great game, Mario 3, one of my favorites. Anyways, I think it's because I'm hanging. All right, you know what? I'm gonna have mercy on my gimbal stick. It's had enough of life, There's Mario. Hi, Mario. We're going to call it... Okay, there's my ceiling. It's really not happy. All right, we're going to give it a break here. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the rough finish. I'll catch you next time.